Hi, and welcome back to the New Frontier Playbook. I'm Scott Phillips. I'm your host on this channel and the author of the book called The New Frontier Playbook. So, we're going to set some context before we jump in, but this episode is talking about a future minimum wage in space in a market economy and why that's such a big deal and why people are going to actually really like the idea once they think about it and explore it. But first, let's just set some context. The New Frontier Playbook is about the political economics of a future in space. And this econ track that we're going through has had a series of episodes. So we started with episode one. These are all building blocks. Episode one was to talk about an astronaut economy versus a market economy. Episode two was to do a price check on a cup of coffee in that future market economy in space with some eye opening results on how much a cup of coffee could cost. Episode three was to describe what a market economy in space looks like and give it a name. For us, we call it an economic conjugate, which is sort of like a verb tense, inspired by verb tenses. Plural version in terms of wages and costs compared to the terrestrial single tense. We also then went on to episode four to talk about conjugates on Earth. There are very low cost economies and very high cost economies on Earth. So it's not impossible to see that gap and that difference or to have an economy that works at a much higher price point. We're now going to talk about minimum wage in space and what we think that looks like. Now, again, we just talked about a conjugate, but let's go ahead and recap real quick. The idea of an economic conjugate when it comes to space is a market economy operating in space where prices and costs are exponentially higher. The cost of water and air aren't free. You have to build it, mine it, process it. And so costs are higher, therefore prices are higher, and wages are higher. And people pay for what they use in space, and that's why the wages have to reflect the costs, which could be 10 or 100 times more expensive. So that's the recap of an economic conjugate in case you're jumping into the series midway through. Now let's look at notionally what a minimum wage might look like in space, in a future market economy in space. Because a lot of the bigger voices talking about a big future in space don't talk about what it could mean for you or me. Well, maybe not me, but for you. So let's think about a wage rate and an economy that's operating at 10 times the price and cost structure that we see in an economy here on Earth like Manhattan. Wage is probably going to be at 10x, something like $250 an hour. Now that sounds crazy, but there's certainly professionals that charge more than that here on Earth currently. And costs are going to be very expensive. So $250 an hour is $40,000 a month, and it's $480,000 a year. Those are some big numbers, and that looks pretty cool. But the key thing is, what's the cost of living? What are you charged to live to earn that wage? And the truth is, cost of living in space is going to be at least 10x more than it is on Earth. So you can probably expect to pay, and these numbers here on the left, or to next to me here, are purely illustrative. No one knows yet. We haven't modeled this and figured it out, but just to put some numbers around it and get our thinking going, think about rent that costs $15,000 a month out of your $40,000 budget. Food that costs $5,000 a month. You're probably going to pay some taxes and hopefully you'll save a bunch. We've probably got savings here, maybe a little bit higher than what's possible, but it allows us to kind of play with the numbers. And $15,000 a month is $180 per year in savings. And on a 5-year contract, that would kind of mount up to $900,000. You could go home, let's say you get a retention bonus, with $1 million in savings. That's actually pretty cool. But that 10x wage rate might be understating what the cost of an economy in space really requires from a wage perspective. So what if it's 100x? In our conjugates on Earth example, we talked about the difference between a South Asian country and Manhattan, and wages were 100 times different, the gap there. So 100 times different compared to Manhattan would be a wage rate that's $2,500 per hour. That's $400,000 a month, uh, uh, almost $5 million a year, and we can probably, that sounds like a big number. It is a big number, but we can probably assume that rent's going to be very, very high in that 100x economy. So it could be like 200,000 and food might cost 100,000. taxes might add $50,000. You might only save $20,000 a month, but $20,000 adds up quite fast. That's $240,000 a year, which is $1.2 million on a 5-year contract. So here again, it's possible to save for savings to add up to a pretty big number. Now these are huge benefits, and this is a big opportunity. This is a great deal for workers. Any future worker in space is going to benefit from very high wages. It probably won't be you or me. It'll probably be our kids or their kids. But what a great opportunity. Now, the implication of this is people are going to want these jobs, and they're going to want this future and want this opportunity. Now, the funny thing is, this seems to be the implication of a market economy in space. So when I hear billionaires talking about millions of people living and working in space, I think about why aren't we pitching and describing what this means for individuals? Well, this microeconomic example kind of suggests that the individual case for going into space at scale and creating these opportunities for lots of people could be huge. But that's not the only benefit, and we're going to explore an even bigger benefit, one that helps everybody here on Earth, or whether they go to work in space or not. And that's the macroeconomic benefits of an economy, a market economy in space. So that's where we're going to turn to next. We're going to go talk about the macroeconomic benefits. Here we just talked about minimum wage, which could be $250 an hour or even $2,500 an hour. Wouldn't that be incredible? All right, so as always, we'll close here with a quick request for support and help. The first part is, excuse me, go ahead and subscribe for our channel. More subscribers, the better. We're just trying to get the word out and test these concepts. The content for the New Frontier Playbook is at a WordPress site, newfrontierplaybook.com. It's free to read. You can sign up for our mailing list. You can buy the author a beer. And if anyone at all knows Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, let's get them the message, see if they can take a look at this. We're just trying to get the word and the debate started. In the immortal words of Jerry Maguire, help me help you, is kind of how we look at this. And if they were able to provide a little bit of help, write a foreword, we could easily get this published and take it to the next level. All right, that's it. This episode is over. The next one is talking about a public return on investment as one of the major benefits of building a market economy in space. All right, thanks very much. We'll see you soon.